Hello, Miss DeAndrea.
Hey, how are
How are
you?
you? Good, good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. You can hear me all right?
I can. And you are coming to me from St. Louis.
Yes.
Yes, DeAndrea Blaylock Johnson. So welcome to the Lovers Lounge 101 episode. I just got off with Goody.
Oh, yay. I love Goody.
She talked about you on the last episode and how you guys are just, she says, that's my girl, that's my girl,
Yeah, she
So you
is
guys,
amazing.
yeah, you guys have so much in common, with what you do. So it's
Yeah.
awesome to be able to talk to you. And I told her, I said, she was one of the most well listened to um, episodes on the Lovers Lounge podcast. And then, of course, you were too. So that's why I wanted to make sure I had you guys back on the show so that we could talk. Now you are a social worker and certified sex therapist
Well, I'm
at
not yet certified, but
oh
I am in
okay.
the process. Yeah.
All right, from Sankofa Sex Therapy LLC. So why don't you tell everybody what you do at Sankofa?
Perfect. Yeah. So I work with individuals and those in all types of relationships work toward their own self defined goals as it relates to sexuality and relationships. I see people who are dealing with various types of sexual dysfunction that could be anorgasmia or the inability to orgasm. It could be erectile dysfunction, mismatched libido with partners, or really just trying to find time to have sex or even find ways to bring new things and excitement into their relationships, as well as working with people within non monogamous relationships.
Right, and you have actually on YouTube, you have some um, episodes where you do sort of an ask the therapist thing, right?
Yes, I do. I had Ask a Sex Therapist on YouTube where I answered user submitted questions related to sex and sexuality.
Yeah. So that's and the last episode you were on, you came on the show like three times.
Yeah.
You came on once very early on when I first started the podcast and just blew it up. Everybody just, oh my God, so many people listening. And then also you came on again, and then when you came on the second time, you were with a group of ladies. You guys did this um, program that you were doing, I think, not too long ago for couples. How did
Yeah.
that go?
It was wonderful. We had the Spark, which was a series of couples workshops, and we took over the month of September. Janelle Monáe has a lyric that says, "We got you harder, falling harder than a Sunday in September," and that was us. And
That's
so
right.
yeah, every Sunday, like I said, each one of us presented, and it was related to intimacy specifically, different ways of connecting with your partners. And we talked about movement, we talked about play. I talked specifically about creating rituals for closeness. And I provide therapy from a Christian perspective when it's requested by clients. And so some of the things that I presented were from a Christian perspective, but the specific things that I talked about can be used for anyone, regardless of their religious affiliation or if they don't participate in any type of religion.
All right. And then you came on and you did a show that, of course, just to ask questions. That was our last show that we did. So, what I would like to do is I want to do something like that today. Like, we'll just kind of do some questions and answers sort of thing. And so, speaking of couples well, Christian couples, I want to go there first
Okay.
because you talked to Christian couples and Goody and I just talked about the stigma with sex and love and relationships, right? Because a year ago when I started this show, I'll be honest, it was pretty brave of me to do so because people just a lot of times don't want to really show that they're interested in something like that. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to like any posts that have anything to do with it, or they don't outwardly show that they're interested or that they support me. So it's kind of hard. I have to kind of just keep pushing on, even though I know, that people kind of feel a little squeamish about it, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
especially Christian people, you know. And so, why do you think that is, DeAndrea?
Yeah, encountered the same thing. I have a Facebook like page, and I remember someone telling me, like, I'm not going to like your page because I don't want everyone knowing that I like your page and I post Bible verses, but I watch what you do and I follow what you do. And I thought that was really interesting. It really speaks to how, specifically within Christianity, we do not do a good job of talking about sexuality from a sex positive perspective. Um,
Hmm.
it's the idea that you can't worship God and enjoy sex, which is against the theology I believe in. And so it also speaks to like a certain level of shame or a layer of shame that is
Yeah,
associated with anything that's sexual, which again is not based in any theology, but I think it's based in a lot of the different things that we learn within our churches or that we learn growing up within our faith communities. And so I hope that some of the work that I do works to dismantle some of those things and some of those ideas of shame.
you and I both, because again, that was really the driving force behind this show and my doing it is because I do find that people have such a stigma or they're such, embarrassed about, talking about sex or, whatever, or showing interest in it. When
Mhm.
all along, God made our bodies, right?
Yes, yes.
And, I'm sure when he made it, he intended for us to use it, or else if he would not have made it. So, what are your thoughts about that? I know you have given some comments on that before.
Yeah, I think about how another colleague, Brittany Brodus Smith, she says, if God made my clitoris, right? And she's got a line of shirts that says it's the clit for me. But I think about how we have people with vulvas have this organ specifically, the only purpose of the clitoris is pleasure. And if I believe in Psalm 139 that God created me fearfully and wonderfully made. That includes my clitoris and that includes my ability to experience and to share and to give pleasure. And so, in denying that, I think that's really denying who God made us, who we are, who God made us to be.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So anyway, I thank you so much for doing what you do, and we just gonna keep on trying to do what we do because I know, like Goody said earlier, they don't want to, acknowledge it, but they're having sex, So it's
Absolutely.
like, yeah,
Where
so it's
did
like,
your just come from?
if it wasn't for sex, we wouldn't be here, right? Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So here's some questions that I want to talk about. So one person is saying that it is so stressful right now with the pandemic. Number one, you have the stressors of the pandemic. You have, maybe I've lost my job or my husband's lost his job, or now we've got the kids at home all the time now, and I'm trying to help them with their homework, plus do my job. And some women, it's almost to the point where they're about to quit their jobs because they just can't do both. There's just so many stressors, and then they find themselves in the home with their mate or their spouse more. And so the tensions are high. And it just seems that they have a decreased interest in sex and connecting physically. So what do you say, to people about that? I know I've heard you talk about how, we have to kind of be intentional about these things because they don't just happen. So tell me about that. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just having this conversation with someone. Someone asked, like, what do you think about planning sex? Like, doesn't that feel inauthentic or it takes away the spontaneity? And I think that it's so important to understand that sometimes when you don't plan things, they tend to not happen. And it's important, if sex is important to you, then you may have to plan it. Like you may not necessarily have to put it on your Google Calendar, but you might, and that would be perfectly okay. I think a lot of times we get so caught up in our roles as parents that we forget to be partners.
Oh, yeah.
especially with everything that's going on. You got the kids at home 24/7, although some people are starting to go back to school. But, it's really hard to kind of steal some time away to be together as a couple, as a relationship. And so, like you said, it's all about intention. It's all about making sure that you're finding ways to connect to each other, even if you don't necessarily have sex. And so, I know you mentioned about how sometimes people are losing interest in sex, and I'm wondering if part of that loss of interest is because they're not making space or time for it. Um, just because you're not able to leave home. So spaces that may have been sacred for sex, now you're doing work in bed, or, like our
Yeah,
work are really overlapping and colliding. And so I would suggest possibly looking at ways to, again, make sacred spaces for things. Um, do your work in one area of your house. Like for me specifically, I tend to work at my dining room table. So it's only one spot at the table that I do work, though, not the whole
mhm,
place. Like I eat somewhere else,
yeah,
then I do work. And, but like I'm not in a different room, but I'm still separating space. And
yeah,
finding different ways to do that, I think, can definitely be helpful. But again, being intentional and understanding that if if you're not necessarily working toward having sex, are you working toward any kind of intimacy with your partner? Are you
yeah,
still having um, a couple time where you're just able to be together with each other without screens?
yeah,
Um, Finding other times to connect. And oftentimes, when you have those needs met, then you're able to regain some kind of interest in sex.
right, right, yeah. Because I think sometimes and I've talked about this with other guests too. It's like movies and all these kind of things make us think that it's just one of these things that, oh, suddenly it's just going to hit us and we're going to become so passionate and all of a sudden,
It does work like that, and it's so funny because I think about how people will say, "Oh, I want it to be spontaneous," but I think about even when it seems spontaneous, it's planned. If you have taken a quick shower before somebody came over,
right,
okay,
right,
it was planned that you may, become intimate. Like we don't, or if you kept condoms, by your bed, or made sure you were stocked up on lube. Like it may have felt spontaneous, but there was a certain level of planning that was
right,
there. And
yeah,
just to bring that in, that, it may not happen in the movies. And also, we need to remember that movies are entertainment. Of
absolutely.
course, a lot of times there's stories that are created by people, but made for entertainment purposes, and life doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah, speaking of entertainment, something else that's been coming up a lot on the Lovers Lounge is um, porn
Hmm.
and its uh, impact on people. So let me give you an example of the fact that porn sort of has made people think certain norms about sex or our bodies, for example, that all penises are supposed to be about the size of the people that are on these that are on porn, or that the vulvas that you see on porn, that mine should look like hers or whatnot. What are your thoughts about that?
Porn is entertainment. I am not anti-porn. I think that it is great, but it is a source of entertainment. The challenge comes when people are getting most of their sex education from porn. Um,
Yeah,
you said when we don't understand that everybody is different, and your penis or your vulva or your breast or your chest or whatever may not look like what you see in these movies. And so it's important to understand and to have these conversations that That's not real life. Now,
Yeah.
is it okay to want to try some things that you see in porn? It's perfectly fine as long as there's full consent and safety, right? But um uh, you also have to understand that some of the positions that they're showing are shown not because they necessarily feel good, but because they look a certain way on camera. And then when
Right.
you try to emulate it and don't have the same result, it's because that was for entertainment. That's okay, but it's just important to make sure that you have that reality check, that you understand why you're watching this, why you're consuming it, and if you try to emulate these things in real life, know that you may not have the same outcome, and that you do need to make sure you have certain safety things in place. Like they are not showing the copious amounts of lube that are used, right? And so
Mhm.
you may think that if your body is not doing what their body is doing, or is not sustaining the same type of penetration or whatever, that something is wrong with you. And that's not true. You just have to remember that we're getting the edited version, not really having.
After about 3 or 4 takes, and
Yes,
cut, and let's do this again and whatnot. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
You just raised something that makes me think of you and talk about lube. Okay.
Hmm.
And there is a stigma or a thought anyway, especially with what was it, Cardi B and the Stallion. I forget her name.
Yeah.
Um, New song, WAP,
Mm.
right? Wet ass pussy, right? And so I think people tend to kind of think that women's pussies or vulvas or vaginas are supposed to just be always wet. Okay.
Yeah,
But
but it,
especially
yeah.
with this song, and I think it kind of perpetuates anyway that that thought. Okay.
Mm.
But that's not entirely true either. Can you really share and break that down, DeAndrea?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many different things that can impact lubrication, your ability to self lubricate. That could be the types of medications that you're taking. If you're taking any allergy medication, because those things basically dry up mucus, right? And you end up being really thirsty, that impacts your ability to self lubricate. And, or it could be other medical issues, whether, or hormonal imbalances or changes, or like there are so many different things that can impact your ability to self lubricate. And outside of that, and also if you just haven't had enough water for the day, right?
Right, right.
All of these different things. And so what I like to tell people is that WAP includes lube. Like, lube is your friend. Even if you feel that you lubricate a good amount on your own, lubrication, the right kinds of lube can definitely enhance the experience. Anytime that you're doing anything that is causing friction of skin, you definitely want to make sure that it's well lubricated. And so when you're and the thing about it, if you're having intercourse for a sustained period of time, you might want to re-up on some lube, because our bodies, can only do so much naturally. And so making sure that you have, that you don't feel any shame in using lube. It's
Yeah.
perfectly normal. And there are so many good types of lube that are readily available. Since you mentioned Goody, I know she's got some good lube on her site. Um,
Hmm.
and then just understanding the different types of lube that are available. You have water based, which does kind of absorb into your skin, but that's water based, and it's good for anything and everything, just about. You also have silicone based lube, which is really good for folks who may have challenges with self lubrication, or also if you're having any type of anal play, because the anus is not self lubricating. And then I also suggest silicone based lube for folks with penises who are doing solo sex, because of the amount of friction that's there. Water based lube will, like I said, it may kind of absorb into the skin because it's water based,
Right.
whereas silicone keeps a layer of lubrication there, so it lasts a bit longer. And then you also have oil based lube. I So coconut oil, some people do use coconut oil. I
Right.
caution against like a lot of different types of oil, only because the skin in your genitals may be more sensitive than in well, not maybe, it is more sensitive than other areas, so you may have some type of reaction, and that's for any kind of lube that you're using. So you want to make sure that you're using something that's body safe for you. Also,
Hmm.
the thing, if you're using silicone toys, do not use silicone lube, only because the silicone will break down the silicone of your good expensive silicone toys. So you
So
want
that,
to use water-based lube with that.
yeah. Okay. All right. Now, something else that I think is really, we've been getting a lot of questions and thoughts about, and that is the issue of um, sex and climaxing or ejaculating or coming, if you will, that it's supposed to happen all each time. And this is sort of a question from a woman who is saying, okay, my husband seems like he's not coming. Uh, does that mean he's not enjoying this or what? So, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, you know what? And it's funny. I just saw a meme that said, it, on one hand, when a woman has sex with a man and he doesn't orgasm, she thinks, "Well, what's wrong with me?" And then when she has sex with a man and she doesn't orgasm, she still thinks, "What's wrong with me?" Which is so interesting. But I think it's important, one, to understand that good sex does not have to end with an orgasm. You can have wonderful, amazing, delicious sex that you just enjoy the sensation and allow yourself to experience pleasure without having that release, whether regardless of what your genitals are, right? I think that we're socialized to think, specifically with the media that we watch, right?
Right.
That um, sex ends when the person with the penis orgasms. And it does not have to be that way. Um, and so because we're socialized to think that, we often think, oh, he didn't ejaculate. Is something wrong with me? Did he like it? Not, he had a great time. He just didn't have an orgasm, and that's perfectly okay. I think it's important to make sure that you're communicating with your partner and asking them, did you enjoy that? Did you have a good time? How did that feel? And then also reminding yourself that you are not responsible for someone else's bodily responses. You cannot control someone's lungs expanding and contracting to breathe, just like you cannot control if their body has an orgasm. And so, taking that pressure off of yourself and allowing yourself to just enjoy the pleasure that you're able to give and receive.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of pleasure that you're able to give and receive, you being early on in the Lovers Lounge podcast when you came on, I think it was like show 14 or it was really early. And you were one of the first ones to introduce the topic of solo sex.
Mhm.
And first off, can you talk about what solo sex is? And then can you give some examples of different things that you can use for solo sex?
Absolutely. So, solo sex is just another term for masturbation. It is, some people don't like the word masturbation. It's got all these consonants. It's kind of,
Yeah.
hard to say. But solo sex, it just, to me, it just feels a little slinkier. Um, but it's just another phrase for the same idea of
Mhm.
masturbation, where you are giving yourself pleasure. Um,
Mhm.
the various ways that you can have sex by yourself, with yourself, for yourself. Um, I would say, honestly, start with your hands just to familiarize yourself with your body so that you can know like what things feel like. Um, to understand the different textures of skin that you have, what feels good, what type of pressure feels good. And then you can explore different types of toys that are available. And the thing about toys is that they don't have to be gender specific. They are not even necessarily genitalia specific. You
Yeah,
well, some are, but not all are, right? And so you can use various types of vibrators on vulvas as well as you can on penises and also on scrotum. There are now the one thing I will say that are specific are anal toys because you always want to have a flared base for those because those can travel a little further. So
yes,
type of anal toy that you use, you want to make sure that there's a flared base of some kind.
right.
But yeah, there are so many wonderful toys that are available on the market. Vibrating, not vibrating. There are some that have like sucking motions. And you can, like I said, you can use those not just on vulvas, but also on penises, on the scrotum. The possibilities are endless.
Endless. Yes, and it was funny because when Goody was on the last episode, she brought out her bullet and she talked about how it can be used on a man too. And it was some things I was like, oh yeah, you
Yeah,
could, could you? You know, so that was very interesting. Yeah. So
yeah.
what do you say to the woman who says, I caught my husband masturbating? So does that and he doesn't really enjoy sex with me?
No, that doesn't mean that at all. Sometimes people just want to knock one off and they ain't got nothing to do with you. Um, just to say it plainly. Um, I, and again, I think a lot of times we're socialized to believe that if we're in a relationship, then our partner needs to only come to us for every sexual need that they have, and not have solo sex or masturbation be a part of their sexual experience anymore. But I think that solo sex still has a place when you are in a relationship. Sometimes, and people will masturbate for various reasons. Sometimes it's to go to sleep. Sometimes it's just to like, I need to calm down, or as long as it's not a compulsive thing, right? But it can be something that can relieve stress and all of that. And not every time that you want to have sex do you necessarily want it to be partnered. It can still be an experience that you share with yourself. And just because someone is still having sex by themselves, that doesn't mean that they don't want to relate to their partner. It could be, I just wanted to knock this one out, and maybe so that we can have sex later and I can last longer. Like there are a lot of different reasons why people may choose to continue to have sex with themselves even when they're in partnered relationships, and a lot of those reasons have nothing to do with their partner, but a lot of times that's our own insecurities creeping in, and we got to check that.
Speaking of that's our own insecurities creeping in. Um, Something else that I've talked to a lot of my guests about is the issue of women um, being able to touch themselves.
Hmm.
Not just with a toy. You mentioned with your hand, or even knowing their body and their own, vulva and whatnot. There's a lot of insecurities or difficulty being able to do that. What are your thoughts about that? Like, why do you think that women are so squeamish about, oh, I don't know if I can touch myself, or I don't want to look, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think unfortunately, women and those with lived experience of misogyny are often socialized to think that their genitals are dirty, that their genitals are the cause for somebody else to sin, that something is inherently wrong with them and specifically their genitals. And so, where with boys and men, it's almost expected that they're going to masturbate. Like jokes are made about it, right? They're socialized, like they may get teased about it, but it's just expected. That's what they're going to do. Whereas if girls or those with or youth with vulvas are caught masturbating or asking questions about it, it's like, oh, she's fast, or something's wrong with her, when really it's just part of normal childhood sexual development.
Right.
And I think, like I said, because of the way in which we're socialized to think that our genitals are dirty, that's why we tend to not do it. And also the idea that you don't need to worry about sex. Well, I'm thinking about how some people are taught in church. You don't need
Yes.
to worry about sex. Your husband, will teach you once you get to, you'll find out what you need to know. And no one really has these conversations with them as they're growing up. So
Yes.
it's important as we are as we have the opportunity to influence kids growing up, making sure we do something that my homegirl Dr. Lex calls shame-free sex ed, where we
Yes.
are giving them age appropriate information that empowers them to understand the proper names of their genitals, understand that, and going back to how we talked about believing that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, like that too, that's part of
Yes. Yes.
that education,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yeah, I have, as you can tell, I have a lot of thoughts about it, but
Well,
it
you hit a
really,
nerve for me, yes, DeAndrea, because I just did an episode, episode 99, in which it was just right before this 100th episode. I thought, I'm going to just be on this episode by myself and I'm just going to share some thoughts that I'm having. And sex education, shame-free sex education, is something that I just really can't stress enough for parents to do. I was reading this book. Cicely Tyson just wrote a book. Well, she before she passed away, just
mhm,
as I am. I don't know if you've heard about her book.
mhm,
She shares her experience of how she was a teenager, and she had a child very early. I think she hadn't even graduated. She was just about to graduate from high school, and she talks about how she got pregnant, and even after, her mother had never talked to her about it.
mhm,
And even after she had had sex, she didn't even know she had sex. Nobody had talked to her about it, number one. And number two, she was listening to what she heard, from people, like, okay, well, and just what she saw on TV. Well, if it was sexy, it had to be laying down. She said, so I guess I know I didn't have sex because I wasn't laying down. But come to find out, she ended up being pregnant. She had indeed had sex. So a lot of my guests are saying, we really need to start talking to our youth about sex, because if we don't, we open them up for being, victimized. We open them up for having, having situations like Cicely Tyson, like teenage pregnancy. People, I think parents think that if I talk about it, they're going to do it and then she's going to get pregnant or he going to have a child. But that couldn't be further from the truth. What are your thoughts, DeAndrea?
Yeah, research shows us that when children have access to comprehensive sexuality education, and that's sex ed that includes talk about safer sex methods, talk about biology, not just abstinence only, right? But like comprehensive sexuality education. When kids are exposed to that, they actually end up delaying their age of sexual initiation. Because they have more information, they can then make better or different decisions for themselves. Also, research shows that when you give children accurate information about their bodies and appropriate names for their body parts, they're able to advocate. Oh, and also explain to them ideas of consent and honor their no. Instead of forcing a child to hug somebody they don't want to hug, if they say no, let them, honor that no. What research shows is that children are better able to advocate for themselves and let you know if someone crosses a boundary. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because they know, well, my mama doesn't make me hug somebody I don't want to hug, and this person is trying to make me touch them on their penis. and I
Mhm.
know the name of this, and so
Mhm.
I can tell what's happening with me.
Yeah, that's
So,
good. And because there's something else, a hot button and a hot topic for me with this show is being able to communicate.
mhm.
You know, there are adults that still today they're not able to communicate with their spouse or their committed partner about what it is that they want in bed. They just can't even say, my vulva or my vagina or touch me here or I like it when you stroke my penis this way or whatnot. They don't know how to say it because some of them can't even just say the word penis. Some can't even,
Yeah.
be very surprised, but I know you wouldn't because you do this, but some folks can't even say sex. They feel like, well, it. It's like, well, it what? There's a bunch of it's.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you find that? Yeah.
I see it all the time, where grown folks have big challenges with the language that I may use. And so, like, I start off by asking, what language do you use? And I also, and like I said, this is for grown folks, but I talk about the appropriate names for genitalia, right? Now, if you're in sexy time with your partner, you might use a different word. You might say dick, you might say pussy. Like, I'm not saying anything is wrong with that.
Right, exactly.
But it's important as we're, looking to educate folks that they know the appropriate names of our genitals so that we can accurately know what we're talking about. And you were talking about just being able to clearly say what it is that you want, and clearly communicate. A lot of times people just have problems with communicating their desires in relationships, period,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
a lot of reasons. But one of them, I think, is vulnerability. It's the idea that if I ask for this, you may reject me in some way, and I don't want to feel rejected, so I'm not going to ask. And
Yeah.
vulnerability is very scary, but that's why it's important to make sure that you are in situations with someone that you trust enough to to hold that sacred space for you, where you feel safe enough to say what it is that you want to experience.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I think also too, could it be that, people have a hard time saying what they want or redirecting somebody on something that they don't want because they're afraid to hurt that person's feelings or, make them think, bad, make them feel bad anyway. What do
Yeah,
you think?
for sure, for sure. I know that uh, there's a way to say everything. There's a way to communicate what it is that you want, what you want to experience. One thing that I really like to encourage my clients to use, and that I have to often remind myself, is using I feel statements that often will disarm a situation. Um, and also positive reinforcement, where you're saying it feels good when you touch me this way, or even and it goes back to that idea of vulnerability. It's like, I really don't like when you do this, but I love when you do that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so making sure, like I said, that you're with someone that you feel safe enough to be vulnerable enough to say what it is that you want,
Right.
um, but clear enough to yourself that you're able to stand firm in what it is that you want and what you desire.
I in episode 99, the one I just did, I talk a lot to the guys
Hmm.
about, you know, I try to help them understand that, there may be something that they can learn, because a lot of times they think they know it all. Ain't nobody got to tell me I know what do I know what to do. I'm laying it down and all the wrongs. She might be faking the orgasm. You don't
You
even know.
hear me?
So what I'm trying to do is in the show, episode 99, I just encourage men to ask questions and to be curious and to try to find out what she likes. Don't just, squeeze my damn nipples hard because you think the other girl liked it. So you think I like it. Well, I may not. Trying to milk me like a cow. Uh, do ask me, is this is this, intensity good, or is it hard, or soft, or what? You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Just go
yes.
at it, baby. Because listen, I am not a cow. You know what I mean? But sometimes they just think, that they don't want to ask. They don't want to ask. And so I try to encourage men, you know. What else would you say, DeAndrea, if there's men listening or looking at this, how can they be better lovers? Because I know they think they're all that in a bag of chips, that they can't be better, but I believe you can always be better. So
Yeah.
what is it that they can do?
That's probably one of the most frequently asked questions I get. How can I please my girlfriend? How can I make my wife come? How can I, et cetera, et cetera. And my answer is always ask them. Ask them what feels good to them, because like you said, there is no one size fits all answer for pleasure. Everyone's body is different. Everyone responds to touch and temperature and pressure differently. And
And at different times, and at different times.
at different times, right? And so it's important to communicate specifically with your partner about what it is that they want to experience, because they may not like what you think they like. Like you said, a lot of times people will fake orgasms to protect egos, which ends up being a disservice to everybody involved.
Now, see, you done touched on something else. That was another thing. I said, women, stop. That was my message to the women. We need to stop that. Don't do that. Because now you got him thinking that he's doing this and he got it going on, and he does not. It's not working, but you're making him think it's working. And so now he's going to turn around and keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. It's not happening. But we ought to be honest about it, or, redirect, you know.
Yes, absolutely. No, you're good. You are good. But that's real. It's important that we are honest with ourselves and we are honest with our partners, that if it is not good, then that's okay. Um, and that we communicate what it is that we need to experience. But like I said, I understand why people fake it, but it does a great disservice to everyone involved. Because, like you said, you got one person thinking they laying it down, and there's somebody else who's not getting laid down like they need to. So you just got to be honest and with yourself and also with your partners.
Well, and on the other hand, too, I had Dr. Laurie Mintz on my
Mhm.
show a long time ago. Her book, at the time, The Orgasm Gap.
Mhm.
Uh, she talks about the gap between men and women in orgasm. And she talked about how some of the women thought that their vaginas were broken because they were not orgasming. And so some people might fake it because they don't want to be looked at as something's wrong with them.
Absolutely. And that goes back to the idea of not understanding how your body works and knowing what feels good to you. So people may think that if I don't have an orgasm through vaginal penetration alone, something is wrong with me. There used to be this idea that, and this was from Freud, that you had kind of a hierarchy of orgasms, right? Like you had clitoral orgasms, but like vaginal orgasms, like that was the top one. And that shows that you're really mature, which shows how phallocentric he was. But anyway, what research shows is that, and what it could be, is that even vaginal orgasms could be stimulating the clitoris, because the clitoris is this wonderful body that the bulbs of the clitoris actually surround the vagina.
Mhm.
But anyway, it's important to understand, like, some people may not orgasm through vaginal penetration, and that's perfectly okay. You may need some type of direct clitoral stimulation. That doesn't mean that you won't enjoy penetrative sex. You can still enjoy it and not necessarily have an orgasm. Or if you're feeling real frisky, throw a little bullet vibrator on your clitoris during penetrative sex and see what happens. See if incorporating that type of stimulation will cause you to have an
Mm,
orgasm. So, yeah, it goes back to really exploring your body, understanding how your body works, and really accepting it for where it is,
yeah.
and um, and being open to the many different things that your body can do.
Well, thank you so much for coming on with me, coming back on the show.
Yeah,
I
I'm
wanna-
always happy to be here. Always happy
yeah.
to be here.
Yes, and I want to commend you once again for the work that you do and encourage you to keep doing what you do because it is so much, well needed.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here for a long time.
I enjoyed talking with you. So, how can people get in touch with you if they want to maybe come see you or talk to you virtually?
Yeah.
All of that.
Okay. Well, my website is Sankofa Sex Therapy. Sankofa is spelled S as in Sam, Ankofa. So again, that's sankofasextherapy.com. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Sankofa Sex.
Right. Well, thank you, and thank you all that are watching for looking at the Lovers Lounge podcast, an anniversary episode with
Hey.
Andrea Blaylock Johnson.
And
Thank you so much.
congratulations to you.
Thank you. I'm Tina Love, and peace. And of course, don't forget, love.